Everyone that's seeing the podcast, seeing your reels and everything else, they're all curious to know, who are you? How did you get here?
Growing up, I was Sue. And after college, it's like I didn't want to be Sue anymore. And I was so adamant of being Susan. And when I'm here at this point in my path, I wonder, have I been running from that little girl my whole life? Or this whole journey, has it been running from or running to? Because I was depressed and I was lost, but I knew at some point I would make a choice to move forward because I couldn't stay like that forever. So I feel like everywhere I've done, all the choices I've made have led to where I am and who I am.
That life unfolds the way it's supposed to unfold, and that it's all experiences that we need to live. And like you said, this is what makes you who you are, right? And this is what gets us to where we want to be. And many times when we look back at our lives, we see how great it was. Like when I talk to you, your life sounds like a movie. You know, the people you've met, but we make it mundane because we're in constant sort of searching for this grandiose idea of a life that we created in our head.
And there are things you can't explain, and it's those instant synchronicities that happen. When you're in the energy, or I find for myself, I hate to speak in the you, when I've been in the energy of Kundalini and doing the sadhana work, magic happens in my life. People show up. Hi, welcome back to the Sagefull Living Podcast. We're joined here today by Sarah Sanchez.
Hello.
Hello, businesswoman, medicine woman, entrepreneur, retreat center owner, and so much more. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Susan. It is such a privilege to be here, especially today, because today I have the privilege to talk about you. Everyone that's seeing the podcast and seeing your reels and everything else, they're all curious to know, who are you? How did you get here? They want to hear your voice. They hear you interviewing all these people and sharing from this deep sense. And they're like, what about you?
What about me?
How did you find this path? What made you come to this world, right? Because you were also an entrepreneur. You were also in the business world. How do we find you here?
That's such a good question. Recently, I was thinking of the name of my book, right? And growing up, I was Sue. When I came into college and after college, it's like I didn't want to be Sue anymore. And I was so adamant of being Susan. And when I'm here at this point in my path, I wonder, have I been running from that little girl my whole life? Or this whole journey, has it been running from or running to?
Wow.
Right? So it's like everyone knows me as Susan and Susan the Sage, but there was a time I was a small town girl, Sue, and I always felt very trapped and alone where I was. I was different than everyone else. I was raised Jewish in a 99.9% predominantly Irish Catholic community. And I always felt outsider. I always felt different. And I even think when I look beyond that, I always had a sense of spirituality when I was young. I believed in an afterlife, whether that was something I was taught or not, or I believed in reincarnation. When I was in my 20s, I took a tarot card reading class to see if I had the gift. And the woman who taught the class, I noticed that she didn't even need the cards, that she could just sit with someone and tell them everything about themselves. Like she was just this intuitive reader. But I didn't feel I had that. But I would go to readers. So I always had this curiosity in this other world, so to speak. But I don't think I knew where to get on the path or how to get on the path at that time in my life. So I did what everyone else did. We got a job after college. My father said, I'm not paying for you to go to the effing beach. And so I had a job 2 weeks after college. And I don't think I really feel like I had the time to think about what it was I wanted to do. I just had no choice but to do. So I got a marketing job, and that marketing job led to another marketing job. And I feel like I was always searching for more, maybe not taking jobs that challenged me. I feel a lot of my career choices were safe, and I didn't have a mentor or someone to take me under their wing. So I was always pushing to learn more, grow more, do something different than I was doing. I went from growing up in Massachusetts, I lived in Boston, got my master's, called off a wedding. I was getting my master's at Emerson because I always wanted to work in Hollywood. I didn't even know what that meant. So that took me to Hollywood. The wedding to be fell apart. I moved out to LA to be involved in Hollywood, but yet didn't really know what it was I was supposed to be doing or what I was looking for. I just kept moving forward. I think maybe that's for me is resourcefulness. I always just kept moving and going forward, and maybe I didn't know what I was going towards, but I knew that there had to be a forward momentum. And when I got stuck or got really bored, I had to change, whether it was the apartment I was living in, the job that I was doing. So looking back, was I running from Sue or was I running towards myself? So
Or were you following divine guidance
or was
and
I
just following divine guidance? You didn't even know it was divine guidance.
It's a good way to look at it, because I always felt that there was a forward. And for me, when I would get to a point where I wasn't moving forward, I remember when I lived in New York, I had a friend say to me, "You were so hard to be around." And I said, I know I was, because I was depressed and I was lost, but I knew at some point I would make a choice to move forward, because I couldn't stay like that forever. And I did. And of course, obviously, he became a nicer person to be around again. But yeah, those hard points of being stuck and lost happened to me over and over again through this journey. I always used to tell people I wanted to be on a catamaran serving lunch while you snorkel. That was my dreams, to live on an island and work on a boat. And that was my dream. And when I was moving to New York City, people were like, "What happened to the beach?" And I knew intuitively, or maybe divinely guided, that it wasn't time for me to live by the beach. It was time for me to live in the city. And maybe I don't feel, looking back at New York, I accomplished what I set out to accomplish, but at least I feel everything I learned, saw, and did helped to create who I am now. So I feel like everywhere I've done, all the choices I've made have led to where I am and who I am. So from New York, not knowing anything about Miami, this is where I ended up. And I've always said that I feel that Miami is where I found myself, because Miami is where I allowed myself to stop moving and changing so much, and changing the jobs and changing the apartments, and started going more into working on myself and looking within myself instead of looking from the outside of myself.
That's a beautiful journey, and it's a nice way to look at it. I often think that life unfolds the way it's supposed to unfold, and that it's all experiences that we need to live. And like you said, this is what makes you who you are, right? And this is what gets us to where we want to be. And many times when we look back at our lives, we see how great it was. Like when I talk to you, your life sounds like a movie, the people you've met, but we make it mundane because we're in constant sort of searching for this grandiose idea of a life that we created in our head, but we're not in awe and appreciation of what's right there unfolding in front of us, right? Because like when people talk to you or they talk to me, they're like, "Oh my God, you should write a book. That life is amazing." But when we talk about it, we talk about it a matter of fact, right? Like we don't really understand the amazing life that we have lived and all those experiences that were so incredible, right? When you talk to other people, they're like, "What? You did what? You met whom?
You went where?"
Right? Yeah, you went where?
Yeah.
And I think that's like an important learning that we have in this path, to become super present and aware to the greatness that lives in the mundane, in the everyday thing. How do we make this moment like so special, right? Like how do we look back and say, "Oh my God, we had this amazing conversation and it was just so beautiful and raw and genuine," right? Which we do often when we talk, and like sisters and medicine women, and we share. And I think that's the beauty that you're bringing forth to your audience, that you're sharing all of that. And that's what people want to connect to you more. Because when they see you as this person that has it all together, right? And it's like when people look at our lives, they're like, "Oh my God, they have it all together." But it's part of what we're bringing forth, how we're sharing our light, right? Like when we say, "No, we have heartbreak too. we have things happen to us, and it's not that they don't happen to us, is how do we handle it, right? Because before, when life happened, we broke down, and it was like, I want to cry, I want to be in my room, I don't know what to do. But now you have the gift of all these different things that you have searched for, because it's a search. What works for you might not work for me. For some people, they find all the healing they need in breath work, right? For some other people, breath work is, I cannot take it, or meditation, right? But they don't know that there's a million different ways to meditate, that it's not one for everything, or different ideas or different theories and spiritual paths. So what has been the most impactful thing? I mean, I know you know a million things like I do, but like there are certain things that are very, very impactful in our lives that makes us see our lives and say, okay, wow. And also look back and acknowledge what we have learned and how much we have overcome, right? Because part of this work is, when before you reacted to something, now you're like, I can pause, I can take a breath and look at it at a different way, and allow someone else to have their opinion without making me wrong. So it has been like the most impactful thing for you that.
So a few things that are coming to mind, and one, when you were talking about presence, I think that is a big part of it. And maybe being in Miami has made me more present because it's so beautiful, and I'm a Pisces. But I remember telling my neighbor, like, we live on an island between two huge bridges. And when you go over those bridges, it's just gorgeous. It's water, it's city. Every time I drive over those bridges, I am in appreciation. I'm so present to the fact of how lucky I am to see what I see every day. I don't take it for granted. And I don't know if I had that sense before Miami. And I'm not saying it's the beauty of Miami, or maybe it's where I am, but opening myself up to more presence has been such a key thing to happiness and gratitude. Because I see a beautiful tree in the wind and I get happy. Because I'm so grateful for those moments that you were talking about. I'm so grateful that I get to drive over this bridge, because how many people pay how much money just to come to Miami to see what I see every day? So I keep myself in that gratitude. One tool that was a huge change for me in my life and transformation was Kundalini Yoga. And it was really sadhana. Sadhana means daily practice. And we've talked about this before in the podcast, but for Kundalini sadhana is a 4 a.m. practice. And we would come together as a group and do 40 days. It taught me so much about myself. I can't tell you how many people, when I tell them I do this, they go, I could never. It's always I could never get up that early. But I felt that way too. I'm a night owl. I'm up till midnight. How am I getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning? But time and time again, I've proved to myself that I can do it. And I've proved to myself what that work does, because when you do repetitive thing, especially in Kundalini, you're doing a certain Kriya for a purpose in life, whether you're to strengthen your heart or align your chakras or whatever it is that we've done the work for, change happens in your life. And there are things you can't explain, and it's those instant synchronicities that happen. When you're in the energy, or I find for myself, I hate to speak in the you, when I've been in the energy of Kundalini and doing the sadhana work, magic happens in my life. People show up. Things that I've wanted start to become created. So it's like it puts you in an energy of creation. So for me, seeing those changes has been really powerful. Now, am I staying in it all the time? Am I doing Kundalini and doing sadhana every day? No. But it's a practice that I know that when I have the time in my life, or I want to bring it into my life, that it can create some huge change and huge shifts.
I wonder why we do that, right? Because we often find practices that we know for sure help us 100%. Like I was coaching a woman yesterday, and she said the only thing that really grounded me, and I felt like I could get off the SSRIs and everything else, was breath work. Yet she stopped doing it. And there's so many practices that we know are so great, and then we stop.
It's true. The other one for me is family constellations, just because it's a modality to me that's so easy, and it really is creating an awareness. It's helping you see patterns in your life. It's helping you see where you're holding on. It's helping people to see, because it's anyone who does it, how maybe they're out of order in their family and they're acting like the parent to a parent. and how when we in the field put things in the right order, which is the children in front of the parents and then the grandparents, the ancestors behind, how that energy can shift real energy and things start to change within a family just from something that none of the people were even involved in.
And that we don't even understand what's happening. I've done a couple of them, and every time I've done them, it's just incredible what happens, like the energy, how it shifts. And it really makes us connect to energy work at such a different level. People that you thought of will call you in a day or two, tops a week. And all this stuff that was left floating in families just somehow becomes together and gets aligned. And you're like, how did I know that was floating? But it was, right? And it all comes together. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful technique. And I'm so happy that it's becoming so prevalent and that now doctors, I belong to a lot of doctors forums and they're all talking about it, which is great. Yeah, they're talking about it. They're suggesting it, find a good family constellation. And they're talking about what it does energetically.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it's it's super exciting. I'll send you some of those links. Yeah.
And that's a modality that came into my life, and it's just getting stronger and stronger in my life. And I know that I have a future with family constellations because it's just keeps showing up, and I keep getting deeper. And having Michelle Bletchner as my mentor and guide has been fantastic. I can't ask for anything more. Another thing that's really shown me so much is sound healing, and not as a practitioner and someone who lays down and has sound healing performed on them, but being a sound healer and hearing the stories from people after I do a sound healing is fascinating as well, because that really shifts energy in the body. And people can come out and they said, wow, I just had the most beautiful rest. Or, well, oh my God, I started crying and started thinking about this thing that happened to me as a child and I feel so much better. Or I came in with so much anxiety and now I'm walking out in so much peace and calm. So to me, sound healing is amazing. And that's just, it's vibration, right? And it takes it to the levels of everything that we listen to. It is sound and vibration. And if we're really conscious of what we put on the radio, what we're listening to when we're driving, when we're walking the dog, when we're around the house cooking, it can shift so much in our perspective and our energy of our lives if we're listening to the right frequency. So it doesn't have to be a sound healing that's going to knock you out. It can just be listening to classical music while you cook or listening to classical music while you study, because it works with the brain.
Yeah, and that's another technique that's coming forth in the medical world, where I had a guy that was coming to my retreat center. He wanted to be treated for ALS. And I said a lot of the work has been done with sound healing and microdosing with certain plant medicine. And he went to Johns Hopkins and he was paying, I think he said something like $30,000 a day. And when he wrote to me, he said he was there for 6 months. And he said all they did was sound healing every day, but it was so incredible. I didn't care that he didn't come to my center. It was incredible that people are getting this work done. And obviously it doesn't cure ALS because it's not a curable thing, but it stopped the progression. So in 6 months, he had 0 progression. Wow. And that's a disease that has super fast progression. And it's been discovering so many things. The other thing that makes it great, many people are in such a state of nervousness and stress that they don't have the capacity to express themselves. They go back and forth with the same thought. And in sound healing, there's no need for expression. I work with a lot of men, and it's great because all you have to do is just lay down and just allow yourself to feel. Not really hear, but feel, right? And then the music, because our body is 72% water, like all our waters, they just get put together, our chakras come back, and we feel alignment. Have no idea why. Like they all say, this is really weird. I don't know why, because no one really understands why, right? But I mean, there is a medical reason for what happens to us, to our body. But it's a great technique because you don't have to do anything. You don't have to talk. You don't have to participate. All you have to do is allow yourself to receive.
I think some people, they feel like they can't turn their mind off. They can't lay there and just be, because their mind is constantly going. And that's why we're here, right? Is to help people slow that down.
And a great way to do that, that I teach men, is actually to hum. So if you're humming, anything that you want to hum, So I usually make them do like I, O, like the vowels, and then and have them touch their throat. In one of those, there will be a stronger vibration, and whatever that vibration is, a lot of times is all right, like if they're starting to think like, oh my God, I have a meeting or whatever, just go, whatever your vibration is. It's impossible for the brain to have thoughts where you're emitting a sound. So you cannot think. It's impossible. Like everyone can try it, and it's impossible. So you can't do it. So they just start humming, and then that's it. They everything goes back, and it just goes back to the sound. A lot of times, the sound that they start emitting is a sound that's connected to the bowl, whatever bowl we're playing at the time. So it's a great technique, and it's easy.
I love that.
So there's many different ways that we can help people and teach them and guide, and then also teach from ourselves what worked for you. And I think that's why this is so great, right? Because people want to know what makes you so shiny and happy and vibrant, right? It didn't come like we just woke up like this. No, it came through a lot of work. It came through a lot of personal experiences, personal, at the time, disappointments.
Yeah.
That we now learn to look at them not as a disappointment, but as a gift and as a lesson. Because every heartbreak creates an opportunity for us to learn. Many times we'll learn a new modality, a new healing technique, right? We're so broken. We're like, how can I be broken? I'm a medicine woman. Like, this cannot happen to me, right? And then you're like, okay, what I have must be failing. I want to learn something else. And then that's how I got, into sound healing and theta and psyche and like all of the million of modalities that we learn. Because at one point or another, things, they either stop working for you or you get bored.
Yeah.
It's human nature. We want to learn different things. We want to connect to different things. So how do we connect to all those things, right? And how do you discover other things? I've discovered many things by coming into your home, into the offerings you have. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Many times it's just to be in community, to be with other women, to be with other healers. And I'm like, oh, that sounds fun. Oh, I'm going to go check that out. And then I discover a whole new modality that it's, amazing. Like Access Bar to me was an amazing discovery that I've been using a lot, right? Or Theta was also another one in your home. And there's all these things that keep on coming forth. And then also creation that we do on our own, right? We go to a retreat and we have these things that have worked for people. And they're like, wow, this is a really good technique. How do I put Theta Healing, Access Bar, Psyche, and everything, and I put it in one package for my own package? And that's what happens a lot too, like some of the things that we did.
Yeah. And I've said this before in the podcast, a lot of the times with healers, there's something that is their catalyst. A lot of them, it's Reiki, right? And then every modality that they learn, they create their own. They bring it all together to create their own, which I think is so beautiful because we're curious. And that's why we continue to learn and add to our modalities. It's not necessarily we want to master another modality, but it's more information to fine tune what we offer. And I've said this before, it's like it all leads to the same thing. Whether it's something in a religious leading us to God, whether that's through Jesus or Moses or Allah or the Bible or whatnot, the modalities are all leading us to healing, right? So whether it is Theta or Access Consciousness or Reiki or plant medicine, it's all leading to transformation, to openness, to acceptance, right? I think a big part for me has been the older I get, the more I accept who I am. And I love that you said we look back at those things to be positive. One of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, I called off a wedding. Now, looking back, had I married him, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have traveled the world. I've been to so many different countries, and I've gotten so deep into the spiritual world and all these modalities and medicines or what. None of that would have happened in my life. Maybe a little, some of it, but had I married him, 100% would have had children, would have ended up divorced. It would have had a very different.
You already have the whole story.
Oh yeah, I really see many possibilities that would have happened, but it's like, so
the happy ending was not one of them.
No, not at all. And I knew that, but it's like, I know that I wouldn't have seen and done what I'm doing. So that's why I love that looking back and knowing if this, that, or the other thing hadn't happened, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I also feel that even what I suffered as a kid helped me to be more open as an adult and accept our differences.
And I think when we look at life in general, because we all have suffered some type of segregation, or you're not the same as me, because I also suffer that, right? And I mean, almost everyone even people that are like super Anglo-Saxon, white, blonde, and they still feel, and they're not Jewish, but they still feel that. They were like, well, I never belong because all the cool kids were Latin. So we all create a story of not belonging also, that we have to become aware. Because the more I coach people, the more I work with people, we all have the same story, no matter what our path is, right? Like we all have complained about our parents, whether we had loving parents or parents that were hard on us. We all have the same correction. And it's almost like that's part of the correction and the learning, not necessarily something that happened to us, right? It happened to us, but it's just part of life, because no matter who you speak to, they will all share their story. They will all share it from a different perspective, but they will all feel exclusion. Every single person. If they're white and rich, they felt exclusion. I was too white, I was too rich. Everyone hated me. They were jealous of me, right?
Yeah.
If they had parents that were super loving and amazing, they cuddled me. I couldn't do anything. I could never become who I am because they did everything for me. They had parents that weren't supportive. No one came to my game. No one supported me. No one did anything. So it doesn't really matter where we're from. I think that's part of our correction and what we came here to learn. And how do we learn and how to accept it? That's the work, right? Because we can become victims. There's many people that their whole life become a victim. I have a lot of stuff that has happened to me that I can choose to be a victim and say I was this, I was that, everything, right? Like from being left at 7 years old, so my parents immigrated to coming here and started at 9 years old and not speaking the language and just hardships and everything else. So we can all be like anything, right? So I think that's why we also have to start bringing forth, because I think what we teach also is that we're not sick. There's all this talk about like
healing. I know.
Healing, and that always
that
it's we're not sick. It's just awareness, right? Like we need a different awareness, because you were brought up by a certain set of rules that your parents had.
Mm-hmm.
I was brought up by another certain set of rules that are right. But how do we become such close friends? Because we were able to put that behind and allow them to have their guidance. But now we're adults, and now we have our own choices of what are we bringing forth for our friendship, right? How do we become more aware when we start seeing like how are we responsible, right? Because everything that we do is our responsibility.
Yeah.
But we're always saying we blame everyone. We blame narcissists. We blame this one did this, this one did that.
And the call that I just had with Michael Ocho, that'll be on the podcast soon, was about, it's like everything is a choice.
Yeah.
Everything is a choice. And I think accountability is a huge thing. And I feel like the path and the work that we talk about is what helped me create that awareness too of choice. And I had a big thing happen in my life where I did resent and I blamed. And I knew it was a choice, and it still took me a long time to come to the conclusion and really accept it was a choice. And even in all the work that I do, and I knew it, and I knew that I was pushing against it, that it was a choice, and saying it happened to me, but it was a choice.
And how freeing was it when you let go of that story? Yeah. You were actually just, because it's like the sluggishes that you've been schlepping around, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you can just let them go. And it's so freeing because you realize this was my creation. I created that luggage. I created that story.
Whatever it was, good or bad, positive or negative, it was a choice.
And it helped you.
And it helped.
At the time that you were creating that story around that choice, it helped you.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's very difficult to look at ourselves and say, I made that happen. Sometimes it takes a couple of years to have the capacity to look at something and say, wow, I did that. This person reacted this way because I did this. And it's just a chain reaction, right? And to take ownership of that. But there's a beauty in that. It's such a freeing moment.
Like if people could only imagine how it feels in their body when they let things like that go. Like when you were just saying it, it's like I could feel this releasing in my body and this letting go. That happens when we get there, right?
Yeah.
If people could only imagine what they feel in their body and not even realize how tense they are around things because they're holding on to it.
Yeah, and I think that's the importance of the spaces that we're creating, like that you create, like those women's group, where we come and we talk about it, right? Because when we talk openly about our own path and our own decisions and where we go through, it's almost like you give people permission to also express themselves, to say, okay, if these women are guiding and there's like titles of shamans or whatever titles people choose to give us and stuff, and they're going through that, it's almost like, okay, I have permission to do the same. And the sharing that happens is so beautiful, because a lot of the letting go of that extra weight or guilt that we're carrying is just an expression.
Yeah.
It's just when you express it, that's why like writing it, the full moon, when you release it, like letting go, all of that, it's so important.
Yeah, writing
because
it,
it's
speaking
just
it out loud.
It's just acknowledging. Sometimes even to acknowledge that, let's say we're super friends and then all of a sudden like we have plans and you had to cancel and you didn't make a big deal out of it. But in my heart, that was an important moment for me. And for me to say, Susan, maybe it wasn't a big deal that we were having lunch, but that was a big deal for me, right? To actually acknowledge that so the other person knows, because sometimes we don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes you feel like a lunch is just a lunch, but in that other person's life, that lunch meant something. That recently happened to me, and I canceled on someone and I said, I'm so sorry. I just got back. I only have 4 days here. And I was so happy that she said that to me. She goes, I waited for you. I've been trying to see you for all this time. So what it might have seemed like, oh, it's just a lunch, it meant a lot to me. And I was so happy that she had the courage to say that to me, because, yeah, I didn't acknowledge that it was a big deal, right? But it was.
Yeah, that acknowledging how we show up, and not in a defensive way, in an accepting way, right? Or being able to speak her mind in an honest, endearing way and an authentic way, and not in getting mad at you and yelling at you, but just expressing it in a way that it was understood. It's putting things in order, right?
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of the new way that now, retreats or spiritual vacations or whatever you want to call them are happening, where it's more just being in the presence of people that have had many years walking this path.
Yeah.
Right. And then because things happen, how do we react? Like a lot of people say, wow, it was amazing. Like I had a thing where there was how Ecuador has like these things in the mountains and stuff, but there was actually a closure and we couldn't get to our destination. Like it almost happened to us, but we actually couldn't get to the destination. Right. And instead of like freaking out, like I usually will do like in normal life, I was like, okay, it wasn't meant for us to go there. And I was like, there is a beautiful waterfall around here. And it was just allowing life. So people love that example of things going wrong. And then how do we react to it, right? Like how do we not react to it? And how do we just allow things to flow? And I think that's part of like the example that we're bringing forth. Like, how do we live a life well lived without freaking out for things that happen? Because things will always happen.
It's living more aware and more conscious. And I really feel like when I slowed down because of, like I said, all those moves and those changes in Miami helped me to find me, because I started to take that time to connect to myself, the time to understand those things, the time to go within more and come out of fight or flight.
And I think for women, it's also super important to be more joyful. Like
and play.
We have been so programmed that we have to sort of show up our worth and like doing. That's not our energy. Our energy is not to constantly be doing. Why do you think it's so amazing when we come and we get together and we do the art thing, like soul collage or the vision boards or anything? Because we're playing, or art or cooking or whatever. It's like we are playing. And that's one of the things that people have forgotten to do, like to play, to dance. Like when we go to drum circle, like to dance, like to find moments of joy.
People we don't know. Instead of being that more open and welcoming and curious to strangers, people get more in fear. But there is so much loneliness. And yesterday, somebody told me a story about their father getting scammed. Well, he's getting scammed because he's giving money to who he thinks are these beautiful girls because he's lonely. We're craving connection. And you're so right. There's so much community out there, or we can create that community. We have to be open. We have to be open to open our doors to other people and to strangers. I do it all the time.
Yeah,
you
look
do
at
it all
your
the
creation.
time.
Yeah.
So I have a home called the Sagefull. We see it on the podcast. I shoot there. But when I have open houses or events and people come, or even family constellations, and people are always so gracious and so like, wow, that I opened my house. And to me, it's like that's second nature. I don't understand how people think that is such a big thing that I'm doing. And it goes back to me acknowledging myself and the things that I do. But a lot of people can't do that. They can't they can't handle that. They get too much stress of having too many people in their house.
But they want it, because
they
so many
crave it.
people that come to me, they say, oh, can you do something in Boca? Can you use my home? Can you do this? Can you do that? Like, they want it. They want to create community, but they don't know how to do it. Maybe that's something that we can do. Like, if we do a gathering in different homes, so people can see how easy it is, because it is really easy. It's really opening your home and your heart, right? Like, with putting everything aside, like, are they going to think my home is beautiful? Are they going to think it's ugly? Is it clean? Is it old? Is it new? Like, when people come to your home, most people feel like a huge blessing. Oh my God. I know I feel like if you invite me to your home, to me, it's like you invited me to your holy temple or something. Like, it's such a privilege for me to enter someone's home. I never look at, like, is it dirty? Is it clean?
But you're right.
Like,
that is, people worry about
it's like
that.
people are worried about it, but like, just open your home, open your heart, open your friendships. And that's how you find community, right? That's how you stop being alone. And that's how you stop connecting to the scarcity of life. Because I think a lot of people, every time I come back from Ecuador and I come back to my clients, they all, oh my God, have you watched the news? And they're connecting to fear. What is the news feeding us? It's only feeding us fear and scarcity, and humanity is not good. And they say, how can you be like this, right? And because the world that I have created, I have only people like you.
Yeah.
In my world, I have only people like you that are connected to making the world a better place, that are creating communities, that are doing,
And not focus on the
Reiki,
fear.
healing work. Hardly anyone watches the news. We know there are things happening, but we're focusing on being the solution, right? Like, how do we change the energy? Because collective fear, it's really important. Collective energy is really important. Collective blessings are really important, right? When we do the groups of theta healing or any access bar or any of those groups, and you feel the prayer, right? Like, you feel your whole blood, you feel your community, you feel your state, feel your country, like the planet. Like, sometimes you do planetary blessings, and I know I feel it, and I feel like, wow, I'm making a difference, right? Instead of feeling like, oh, the world is ending and I'm ending with it. No.
Yeah. How can we
I
be
have
the
little
change?
hands.
Yeah.
I mean, every time we go to the jungle or a river or something, we're picking up garbage, we're making a difference, right? Like, it's our duty, it's our universal duty to leave everything better than we find it. Whatever it is, it could be a public toilet, it could be someone's home, whatever you see. That's part of who we are. And that gives you a lot of strength, right? I think that's what gives you a lot of strength, because you're connecting, you're joining, you're constantly searching for different things. How do you help your community? I know we're always talking about what can I bring forth to my community, right? What joyful thing, what event, what new ideas that you can create.
And I love this, creating community, and think of it in a different way of removing the things we use to distract. Let's not go to a happy hour. Let's not have people over for drinks, although we can, but let's keep the focus on conversation, I love that. Like you said, a book club. You know what I mean? I don't know that for some reason when you're talking, I just saw people getting together and drinking. And I was like, well, let's bring them together. But you're right. There's so much opportunity.
But we get together and we drink. We just drink cacao.
Yeah. Or we have a glass of wine or a
we have
spritzer.
but it's different. That's not the whole
Focus.
goal or the focus.
Yeah.
Our focus is, how do we come together? Like, how do we hold each other? Because we also need holding. Right? We're also constantly giving. We're constantly listening to people. We're constantly holding space for other people. But then who's holding space for you? Right? We're lucky we have each other, right? Yeah. Like that we can call each other, because we also have almost like an appearance to keep, right? If you're guiding, it's almost like you cannot really break down. Although I do, I always show people my humanity, and I think that's what.
I think that a big part of all of it is authenticity. And people need to be more authentic with each other, but they need to be authentic with themselves. I think it comes down to being truthful for yourself, and just what we were saying before about, I chose this. These are the things that happened because of the choices I made. So it's that accountability, right? I think that's what helps us show up better in the world.
Even the loneliness part, right? Like when people say, I'm really lonely, I don't have any friends. Well, when was the last time you reached out to someone? Or you smiled at someone? Or you try to make a friend at the gym or anywhere? Because how do we become friends? We're two strangers that became like sisters. But how does that happen? You have to have the desire for that. And we have to connect to, like, we want to have that desire for friendship. We always say, oh, when we go to another country, everyone's so happy and everyone's so friendly and welcoming. Well, they're all saying hello. whatever, because that's our customs, right? But we can do the same thing here.
Right.
We can say hello here. We can greet our neighbor. We can be neighborly. And if we think about it, when was the last time you baked something and you said, oh, I'm going to take some to my neighbor, or even know your neighbor, right? Like, we don't do that. We don't put any effort forward, but we have sort of like an expectation of these things to happen. I know that was my thing. And I was like, well, no one's coming to knock on my door and say, I want to be your friend, Sarah. You look like a cool girl. No, like if I want, I have to. I started going to the drum circle. I started going to your things. I started going to different venues to meet people that were on my path, that were in alignment to what I was trying to create or be. But it's a creation. It doesn't just happen. You created your community. You open your home to create a community. It doesn't just happen. It's a creation, like everything. Love is a creation. Friendship is a creation. Your wealth is a creation.
So we need to disconnect from this and more connect here. And I think that's a big part of it too, right? To create community is we have to get off the phone and off online and get in person. And COVID is over. It's time to be face to face.
It's challenging because more and more people that come for coaching and stuff, they keep on talking about, well, I don't need friends anymore because I have ChatGPT and they're telling me everything. So it's more of like a disconnection.
Yeah.
But eventually, in the beginning, it's fun because we are human beings. We just want attention and we don't really care where we get it from. But eventually, it's energy. It's an interaction. It's being in the presence of another, right? Like that's why I always tell people, get a massage. When people come and they're depressed, I always send them to get a massage because the brain doesn't know whether I'm touching you and I care about you or I'm touching you because you're paying me and I'm massaging you, right? It's still energy share. It still balances the body and it's super important. So it's super important, like to tell people like, no, it matters. ChatGPT, it's not going to save you. It's great that we have now because not everyone has access to pay for a therapist 24/7 or coach that they can have access. So it does. If I've put questions to see how would it answer, to see if it answers like I will answer. And I've been with other psychiatrists or therapists or shamans, and we've actually played with it to see, will it answer like this person? And it really does answer like the person. So it does give an answer, but it goes beyond that. It goes into energy, right? Like that's the importance of being amongst people, is the energy that we share.
Well, like that, just when you said, how is it that you and I connected? It's energy. We were on the same vibration. And obviously there was some sort of connection. We're not going to get this with everyone, but you have to get out there. And I think that's what's so hard for people, is getting out there. Find this community. I have family in Orlando, and it's like even a 20-something-year-old. How does she find friends and community? It's so hard for people to connect.
But it's not hard if you look. If you look, if you know, okay, I want to be connected to other people. And then you start looking. I mean, now...
And it's the social anxiety that people suffer to get themselves there. So that's where we got to coach them into how to get over that fear, that social anxiety of showing up by yourself that first time. And that's what holds people back in this at home.
Yeah, it's a choice, right? Because if you think about it, when people know you, you're afraid of being judged because they know me. So usually when you go to any spiritual work, I personally prefer to go alone, right? In a place that no one knows, because I could show up without a mask. If I show up without no one knowing me, they don't think of Sarah as a curandera, a healer, a coach, a therapist, or an owner of a retreat, whatever.
That showed up.
I'm just another person that needs connection. They don't expect anything from me. They don't expect any blessing. They don't expect any healing. They don't expect me to be grounded. There's nothing. So if you really think about your creation, you're creating from lack, right? Because if you create from strength, hell, this is my best chance. But no one knows. No one knows me.
I love that. That is a great advice on that social anxiety that people have. Is you can show up whoever you want to be because nobody knows you. And that's like, for me, every time I moved to a new city, in a way, I reinvented myself. I didn't even realize it until a friend said to me, I can't wait to see Miami Susan. I go, what are you talking about? And she said, we had LA Susan, we had New York Susan, we had Boston Susan. And I was like, oh my God, she's kind of right. So yes, you can show up to...
Where did the hats come from, Miami?
No.
Has been before?
No, New York. But I don't have any of the New York hats left. But when I lived in New York, there was a vendor on Prince that I would get 15% off because I bought so many hats from her. But yeah, the hats really started in New York.
Yeah, I always tell people when they tell me that they have social anxiety, I always tell them that is a great time to show up because you're not showing up with a title, right? So when we give, so for example, if you're my sister and I give you the title of sister, I have one expectation. If you're my teacher, I have another expectation. If you're my lover, I have another expectation. If my friend, even the level of friendship. If you're my best friend, it's different. If you're just my friend, it's friend, right? But if you're my best friend, something else. So it's also bad. Like you don't have to show up for anything. You're just
show up.
Showing up.
And that's the point right there is you got to show up. You have to just show up.
With everything. It's like the gym, right? Like it's like the gym.
Yeah, it's
we
not
have a choice.
Work. You can pay the membership, but if you don't show up, that's half the battle for all of it. And even in the spiritual work, it's getting over your fears and showing up. Because if there's a curiosity on something, there's a reason. You're being led and you have to see that and then make that choice, you know?
Yeah, understand the polarity of your choices. Because every choice, there's a polarity. Being skinny is hard. Being fat is hard. Being rich is hard. Being poor is hard. Everything you have to choose.
Yeah.
And most of the time, the other side is not great. So that you're doing the same amount of work if you think about it. And a lot of times when you're in the negative side, it's a longer creation. Why? Because your mind is constantly working. To keep you in the negative thought, your mind is constantly working. You have to keep on creating to keep the negativity going.
Keep the negativity, it's so true. What do you think, Kelly? This is your first podcast. So my house was built on a Kundalini trip to India. And every night we would ground and meditate. We were meditating all day. We were at the holiest of sites meditating, and magic was just happening left and right. And every night we would ground with the leader and sing. And I kept getting messages to open a healing home for healers. Open a healing home for healers. I don't even know if I knew what that meant. But on that trip,
do you now?
Well, I think I started as a space just for healers, and that's not what the house became. The house became a space for community. It became a space for healing. And then it became a space for healing of a younger generation that I didn't even see happening, you know, and it just became a healing home. And that is something that everybody can tap into, right? And having their homes be more welcoming spaces. We get so caught up in people sometimes say to me, oh, how can you have so many people in your house? And something gets broken, it gets broken. Something goes missing, it goes missing. We can't hold on so much to those things because then we're living in a museum, right?
Yeah. And I mean, that's what makes our houses a home.
Yeah.
When we have these places that are filled, there's times that there's a holiday and Florida is so transient that no one has anywhere to go. And if you say, oh, I'm having, Christmas, Easter, Passover, whatever, you can have 20 people, all strangers that didn't have a place to go and feel so blessed that they came to your home and now they have a place to be and connect.
Yeah. I've done that many times.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving and whatnot. So what else have we missed out? What do we want to cover? Any other questions you feel people might want to know?
What's your biggest fear?
God, I don't know. Because it's not death. I'm not afraid of death. I think that I've always felt like that I'll never meet someone and spend my rest of my life alone. But I'm not really sure that's my biggest fear anymore, because I feel that I'll always have myself. I'll always have God. So I think that doesn't
apply.
It doesn't really, because when you said it, I wasn't like, ooh, I guess maybe dying alone, like physically dying alone and suffering in that death. That's probably maybe my biggest fear. But the death itself, I'm not afraid of. What about you?
I think I've always been afraid of being stagnant. And recently I sort of came confronted with how firm in my beliefs I am, which makes you be stagnant, right? Because to me, one of the greatest gifts we have is curiosity, and to constantly be evolving and learning and acknowledging that life is not just like the way we imagine it to be. And that what was right yesterday is not right today. And what's right today is definitely not going to be right tomorrow, right? And to also to have people be in acceptance of that, because I think a lot of people, like in many relationships that have ended, they all say, well, you're constantly changing, we never know. And I don't know if that's just my nature because I'm a Gemini, but to me, like, if I had to be the same person, like I wouldn't,
That stagnation is
yeah, like I wouldn't want to like be that, but a lot of people fear that change because they feel like, well, no, I know you a certain way, right? Like I want you to stay a certain way. And there's an unfairness in that. And there is also an unfairness because that's like a mirror that was shown to me because I was given that, right? So for example, if I know Susan as this patient, loving woman that's always there for me, every time I call her, she opens her arm to me. Then if I call you one day and you're like, oh, you're busy, I'm like, ah. But instead of being gracious, I'm being like, she has a life, she's busy.
right. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? To be like, oh, instead of going into that. Because they say whatever you fear the most is what you have to learn from, like what's like your biggest lesson, right?
Yeah.
Like I know my Kabbalah teacher every year, he used to ask me the same thing. And I always fear the same thing. It never really shifted.
Yeah,
it's
always been
like
the stagnation.
It was always like the fear of knowing more, learning more, just
the fear of
constantly being in involvement. That was super important to me. And there's years, for example, like last year, I went through a lot of personal things and I felt like I didn't learn anything. I really didn't do anything, but it was beautiful because I allow myself to receive. Remember, I told you that in one of our conversations, it was like beautiful to receive from the community. It was beautiful to actually say, hey, I want help, to tell my teachers, like, I'm breaking down. I want help. I want someone to also hold my hand. I need someone to hold me. And it was great to see the whole community. Reiki people came and gave me Reiki. Other people came, did sound healing for me. And all these people came and gave me all, whatever modality they knew, whatever they had, came together. And I think that was a big learning for me because I also try when I see a fellow healer or whatever you want to call, practitioner, or whatever you want to call us, losing their light or losing their strength. To me, it's super important to bring them back to that space, to hold them and bring them back to that light so that they can be of service again. And I think that only happens if we're in constant also flow, right? Of what we're learning, what we're giving, our awareness, because things happen all the time. And no matter how evolved we think we are or how much learning we feel we've done, there's always something that you're like, damn, I reacted that way to that? What? What? I did that?
Yes.
Everything
as these facilitators, we're not perfect either. We are still human. And I have to remind myself of that because sometimes someone will give me advice and I'm like, who are they to tell me? I've done more work to them. And then it's like, no, you need to hear this right now. Doesn't matter who it's coming from. There's obviously a message within this for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So humbleness too.
Much humbleness. Especially lately. I think it's beautiful that people are going to get to know you at a more personal level, and that they've been asking for it. And this moments, that we get to speak to you and we get to share you and share like other moments. I think I'm going to start filming you when you're playing and acting silly, and doing all these other things so people can see what does all this mean when we put it into everyday life, right? Like, how does that show up in aliveness? How does that show up in everyday activities? When we go play with the hummingbirds or the butterflies, like, how does that show up? How does that aliveness shows up? And I think that's like, because of everyone that comes to us, they want to connect to happiness. They want to connect to their hearts again. They want to feel their bodies again. They want to see themselves in the mirror without feeling shame of what they're looking at, right? And then it's like, that's the beauty of what we bring forth, that we bring that heart and say, okay, this is how I did it, right? When I did this, I did that, right? So to show that. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for opening your home, your heart, your wisdom, for sharing everything that you have learned so generously, because it takes us a lot of investment of time, money, and everything that we put to learn all this stuff so that we can be our light for ourselves and then be a light for others. So thank you, sister, for
Thank you.
for being with me, for inviting me to interview you. I feel so privileged.
Thanks, Kelly, for sitting by us.
Yeah.
My mom's dog. She's along for the ride. Are you not?
And she wanted to bring aliveness and playfulness to us. So we were
Yes.
like, yay.